Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening. Welcome into the breakdown. Well, the Springboks showed their Rugby World Cup credentials with a massive flex over the All Blacks at Twickenham. Scott Barrett may be in hot water. He faces a date with the judiciary tomorrow, New Zealand time. And we've got two knights on the program as well, Sir Steve Hansen and Sir John Kirwan. Great to have you joining us. The usual suspects are here. Jeff Wilson, Mils Muliaina, and world-renowned journalist, Francis Douglas Memorial College, long-time All Blacks and Taranaki fan, Patrick Gower, royalty on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming in. I
don't have a knighthood. I know you're talking about those. There's a couple of other knights on the show, and I do feel a little familiar in here with all the cameras and stuff, but I do feel like a fish out of water. You know, probably a bit like Steve Hansen in the Wallabies camp, but at least you guys are from my country.
Paddy, how many days to go until the Rugby World Cup, and should All Blacks fans be concerned after what we saw on Friday?
Yeah, well, I wish we could push the days back a bit after what we saw on Friday or Saturday morning here. And I tell you what I saw as a fan, we got annihilated. And, you know, it was an abomination as well in terms of the refereeing and the amount of time the game took from a fan's perspective. And I know that Ian Foster called it an uppercut afterwards, but as a fan, it more felt like I'd been kicked between the legs. That was the feeling that I had. That was the feeling that I personally had. But, you know, I do just hope that it was an aberration. And that we see that, you know, the All Blacks bounce back from here.
These words that you're using, yeah. Mils, are you going to continue? What have you got?
No, there was panic. There's no panic in this, is there, guys? I mean, if other fans panicking, we're going backwards, we're not. I think, hey, regardless of the result, we needed that. We needed that hit out. I mean, obviously they would have wanted to win, but we've still got a very, very good team, Jeff.
We have. I have no doubts about that. It's nice to have someone sitting opposite me that's intellectual, yes, clear and understanding. We'll talk to Sir John Kirwan a little bit later on. Look, the reality is that we were down to 14 men for a long period of time once again. It happened to us last year against Ireland, and we suffered because of that. I'm going to go straight on the offensive here. There's no way that Scott Barrett should get any type of suspension. The fact that he's in front of the judicial process is ridiculous, because ultimately, for me, this shouldn't have even been a yellow card for going off his feet. The contact wasn't direct with the head. It wasn't with the head. It was on the body, it was on the shoulder. You watch what the first contact is. There's no doubt he's gone off his feet. But he's hit him in the shoulder first, and then there's been a collision with another player beside him. And I look at that, and yes, it was reckless. But the number of clean-outs that happen in a game like this, Mils, that this action happens all the time. The fact that he got it wrong, he's made a mistake, but there's no way, and I go forward and we go and look at a Rugby World Cup, that this is going to be the standard. Because if it is, we're going to rely so heavily on this bunker to look at every single breakdown. Games are going to last forever.
Yeah, and it did, didn't it? It lasted forever.
You're right.
I mean, you wanted to turn over to the other channel, but the fact that last shot probably showed it, right? You know, he did go off his feet. There's no contact to the head. But again, we don't want to be talking about this all the time. It's the bunker, the judicial, you know, the refereeing, and unfortunately, you know, after a very, very good South African comprehensive win, we're still talking about sort of controversy, Paddy, which is disappointing.
Look, it's an 80-minute game. It took 107 minutes, and there was 33 minutes of actual play. And if we're going to be having conversations like this all through the World Cup, it's going to be a boring World Cup. What worried me about the red mist that Scott Barrett showed and the red card is, yeah, I agree with you. I hope that nothing happens to him at the judiciary. But Goldie, if something does happen to him at the judiciary, the risk that Ian Foster and the selectors took by taking that one less lock for one extra wing is really going to be exposed. Yeah,
and the margins we have in this game are so small now. And you're right, they've taken a risk. The fact they've covered on the outside back department, and then the injury to Brodie Retallick. We're going to find out a bit more about Tyrell Lomax. That doesn't sound great, Kirstie. But I come back to these margins once again. I want to show you a couple of clean-outs from the Springboks in this game. If you talk about moments, significant moments in the game, how close were they? And just look here, watch Dane Coles on the ball. Player off the ground. If he collides here, what's another one here? On the back of Dane Coles' head. That clean out. Two guys going to ground. Now, if Dane Coles stays down, goes like Dwayne Vermeulen, hits a knee, can I have a look at that, please? Okay, shoulder on the back of the neck. What's the outcome on that? And that's every collision. And so for me, the margins you're talking about and some of the frustrations we're going to have if we see inconsistency. Now, I want to just quickly, I don't want to take anything away from a dominant South African performance. They're very, very, it was a demolition. But when you're up 15 on 14 and you're a Springbok team which were comfortable to have 7 forwards on their bench, we knew where they were coming, that numerical advantage was always going to take a toll.
What I want to know from you two is, do you think we are going to see players taking a fall, or to use some football parlance, taking a dive? Because we did see with Marks there, you know, effectively appealing to get the bunker in on Scotty Barrett. Are you too worried that we're going to see this sort of thing in this World Cup? And that would be a big change for rugby if we did start to see that.
Absolutely you're worried because of the inconsistency. I mean, a TMO can pick up a bad clean. Someone goes down and they're reactive in terms of, you know, faking an injury. It has massive consequences in terms of the game. You know, one player off, a red card. And so when you're looking at the most hotly contested Rugby World Cup, and it comes down to a moment of refereeing and inconsistency, that could cost a team a spot in the final or the final.
Massively. We just saw in this one game how it can affect the outcome of any contest. I'm just, you know, I'm concerned right now for the game going into it, but in saying that, we saw in 2019, they started heavy in Japan, and then all of a sudden, when it came playoff time, there was a softening because they recognised the impact it was having on the game. I'm hoping this happens before the tournament starts.
Well, Ian Foster said after the match, no one will rate us now. A man that has been to 5 Rugby World Cups, won 2 as a coach, Sir Steve Hansen, joins us. And Steve, you've caused a bit of a stir over this side of the world, joining the enemy, the Wallabies. How is life under Eddie Jones?
It's been really interesting, actually, and you know, I take the opportunity just to let everybody know what the story is here. Eddie asked me quite some time ago, twice in fact, if I would join his coaching group, and coach. The first time was through the whole season. Second time was at the World Cup, and I said no, I couldn't do that. Couldn't coach against the All Blacks. When he came back the third time, I knew he was reasonably in need of a friend, and he is a great mate, and he's asked me to come over and have a look at what they're doing and pass on anything that I can see that would help them improve. And I had a yarn to Foz about that, and once Foz was okay with it, I was okay with it. You know, rugby is a game that creates friendships all over the world. It's a game that creates conversations all over the world, and you know, Eddie and I have known each other since 1998. I felt like he needed a hand, someone just to basically back up what he was doing, and that's all I've done. You know, I've just had conversations with him, the coaches, and haven't put on any Wallaby gear, haven't gone to any training runs and done any coaching. I've just been an observer and found out a lot of information that I'll take away for myself. And funnily enough, I've been lucky enough to sit here all week and watch them prepare for an opponent that the All Blacks are playing next week, and you'd have to be mad if you don't think I'm going to pass that on to Foz. So there's been benefits to everybody. Yeah.
Steve, look, it's great to have you on the show, particularly after a performance the All Blacks have just gone through against the Springboks in preparation for a Rugby World Cup. You experienced a bit of this adversity before 2011. Have you reached out to Fozzie since the game and maybe given him some words of encouragement?
Well, Fozzie and I talk regularly. We're very close. We're good mates. We know what he's going through. Like, he's had a really tough time, hasn't he? So he's comfortable with exactly where they are at the moment, and we've got to put the performance against the Boks into perspective. You've got one team that's preparing for the pool of death, so they're right up for it. They need to be right to play the best they can play from day one in the tournament. They played a week ago and played against Wales, and you know, our guys, I think we had 7 or 8 guys who hadn't played for 4 weeks. And both of you guys have been in all that teams before. You know, 4 weeks is a long time. And if you look at the performance, the big thing that was missing was timing. You know, right from the engagement at scrum time right through to everything we did. You know, the line-outs, we were too early. We were just off the pace. And, you know, when you play an opposition that are primed and ready and as good as South Africa are, you're going to get a punch on the nose. And I think it'll do them the world of good. I think they'll bounce back from it really quickly. Personally, they'll be hurt, as you know, any All Black team is when they lose. But particularly when it's, they've got some swimmers in the back there. Sorry about that. And, particularly when it's, you know, on such a massive stage like Twickenham. So I think there's lots of benefits. They'll improve, and hopefully Scott Barrett doesn't get anything, and Tyrell's not out for too long. You know, they're the two biggest concerns, I think.
Steve, you talk about that hurt, and the players will be hurting because the expectation is to always win and win well. But how do they go about this? They won't be panicking, as you know, but how do they? What's the next process? Because I know you talk a lot about process and stuff. What's the message to Fozzie so they actually do park, you know, the result and focus on some of the good things?
Well, I don't have to give Fozzie a message. He's good enough coach. He doesn't need me to give him a message. But the message he'll be giving is exactly what you just said. Let's look at what we've done well here. Let's put some meaning around the performance. And one of the things, you know, interestingly enough, that I heard Colsey say, that they may have been a wee bit ahead of themselves. So they'll talk about their mindset, their mental mindset and their preparation. How genuine was it going into that week? And then everyone will come out the other side fitter, a little sharper because of the game time, and then they'll, you know, roll into this week's training with a little bit more energy and enthusiasm because they're healthy, you know. And then the week following is the World Cup starts.
So, Steve,
you know, we've got to go, Paddy.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you, Sir Steve. I just wanted to ask about, you know, how you saw the role of the bunker in the game with the All Blacks there. And, you know, we talked about 107 minutes the game took for an 80-minute game and 33 minutes only of action. You know, where do you see this going in the World Cup?
Yeah, well, they've got to get better at using the bunker and, you know, move on, make a decision, and then use the bunker and move on. Make some decisions on the field, like they're the ref, they're the sole judge of the game. That's every rule book you pick up, that's what they tell you. So you've got to have referees who are prepared to make decisions and not go to the bunker every 5 minutes. Only go when you need to.
Steve, if I remember rightly, you were, I suppose, after the 2019, I remember you saying the nature of the game had got very defensive. When you look at this Rugby World coming up, and particularly the way that teams have played, France have showed some great attacking ability. Clearly Ireland in the way that they play. We've talked about this being one of the great Rugby World Cups. Do you fear that we might return to 2019 once again?
Well, there's every possibility. If, you know, like if teams start thinking that if they try too much and the ref's going to play too big a part, then they'll shut the shop and we'll get back to what we were getting. One of the reasons, though, that our games become so defensive is because of the breakdown. They're allowed to slow the ball down, so we get these stabilised defensive lines all the time, big walls, and you're trying to run through something that you can't run through, basically, and hence why I think we're getting more injuries, and because it's just too hard. Like if we could get quicker ball and get people out of those breakdowns who are slowing it down deliberately, then the game will speed up. And the other thing I think that we need to really focus on the game is we're so structured. I'm not saying we as in the All Blacks, but the game's so structured. Coaches are going to a structure but they're forgetting the first thing. Like when you win the ball, you want to strike and score a try, because that's the one time you know where everybody is. And you can create a little bit of chaos if you have the right play. If you don't strike, then you breach. And if you breach, don't go into structure again. Just play what's in front of you. And the structure bit comes when, you know, you've got slow ball and you've got to go to something that you know where everybody is to try and speed it up again. But we're probably jumping from winning the ball straight to structure. And, you know, we're just catching ourselves